Welcome to the AI Edge podcast. We're here to help marketing professionals stay on top of AI news and its impact on the industry. So we're here again for another episode of the AI Edge podcast. Today I have two very special guests with me, and I have one noticeable absentee. Miles is not here, but in his place we have Tameka. Hey, Tameka, welcome.
Hi, Shiv. Hi.
How
Hey,
are you
guys.
doing?
I'm great.
And then we have a very special guest, Melissa Grady Diaz. Melissa, can you introduce yourself for the listeners?
Hi, I am Melissa Grady Diaz. I have been in the marketing world for my entire career, and it's a passion of mine understanding human behavior and insight, and using that to be able to create connections with people. I absolutely love the art and science of marketing. I've worked across industries. I've worked in automotive a couple times. I was at Motorola, so in tech. I went to MetLife. Loved working in insurance, proving to myself and others that I can really apply this art. And, I really love human beings, honestly. And so, especially in something like a financial services or, financial wellness for people, I found a lot of passion in it. And I was most recently the CMO for Cadillac for 7 years. And now I am at a healthcare startup called Measured Wellness, moving into more of a broader leadership role and really enjoying thinking about the business more holistically. Obviously, with my hands very into marketing and how we scale that business.
Love it. Well, thank you for being with us. Also, you are a past graduate of our AI Accelerator course, which we are very thankful for.
I loved it. I'm still, we have like little cohort chats sometimes, side chats with people. We loved the format of the class is what really got us engaged.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being part of that. That was awesome. And I'm really excited to actually get into some more of your experience on the Cadillac side and with the new startup. We'll do that at the end. We're going to start with news of the week as usual. So we had some big stories this past week in marketing AI land. The first one was OpenAI. They launched a video platform like 6 months ago called Sora, and it was kind of like a social platform that's like, hey, this is kind of like TikTok, but it's all AI generated content. And also, like, the idea was you could use Sora to create AI generated video content for advertising and marketing and whatever you want, right? And so the news of the week is that OpenAI is shutting down Sora. So a few other details about this story. It was only live for 6 months. It was a big thing when it launched. People were posting videos a lot at first, but over time we saw user growth really go down and even engagement go down. Also, as you can imagine, I don't have any specific data or numbers on this, but it really burned, I think, a lot of money for OpenAI because video generation is expensive, and it didn't really make much money for OpenAI at all, right? It wasn't really a paid product. I think somewhere I saw a stat that maybe it generated like $2.5 million for them. It burned way, 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 way more money than that, right? And so, and then the last bit, pretty important part of the story is Disney announced a partnership with Sora specifically a few months ago where they said they were going to commit $1 billion to OpenAI to, first of all, use some of their models at Disney, but then also kind of have this reciprocal agreement where they would allow OpenAI to use Disney IP, like some of the Disney IP in Sora, right? So if you wanted to make a video of like Mickey Mouse racing down a racetrack or something in Sora, you could. Obviously that deal is dead, right? So that $1 billion is being pulled back from Disney. It's not going to happen. There's no more Sora. So that brings me to the conversation aspect of this story. Like, what the heck is going on? I have a bazillion opinions, but this is not about me. This is about you guys. So let's start with Melissa. What do you make of this story? What does it mean for the industry? What does it mean for video, AI production, all of the things?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. And I think one of the more interesting aspects of it to me was the fact that they are talking about starting to focus more on enterprise, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. It's interesting that they're following Anthropic on that. The other thing I think that's really interesting about it, and I think Sora was very fun. And I do think you had that fun factor that went in. The capability still exists. So I think that the platform and the interaction and looking at those numbers going down and looking at what power probably had to be behind that, the energy consumption behind that, kind of to what you were saying from a cost and just an environmental factor, I think it all makes perfect sense. I think what's really interesting is that the shift and what they're doing right now. Chat GPT is almost like the Kleenex or Xerox, right? You just as the general public uses AI in the vernacular, they say, "Oh, Chat GPT," whether they mean that or not. Um, they are the consumer companion. They're the ones that the older generations are using with the younger generations are probably experimenting more. But whenever you hear about someone's mom, grandma, etc., who loves AI, it's all
Mm.
about ChatGPT. And I think, I hope, and as we get into some of the other conversations about agentic commerce and everything, I do hope that they realize what a strong positioning they have there. And every business user is also a consumer user. M- I think most people use to at least AI, and heavy users. Like I really try to understand what's happening in all the platforms, but I do think they have a real competitive advantage at being the companion for people. And I hope that they stay ahead on that, and they don't lose that. And that's sort of the biggest thing that stuck out to me in the story, or the thing that was like niggling at the back of my brain as I was reading it.
Yeah, quick add to that. Like, I think it's interesting because, you're right. Like, ChatGPT is synonymous with AI in like to consumers, and that's a huge advantage that they've built. But they're obviously like trying to maybe move away from that advantage based on the recent like, hey, we're focusing on enterprise. And I think the thing that's tricky for them is only I think less than 20% of ChatGPT users pay for ChatGPT, right? Over 80% use it for free. And that means you have to have another monetization model, which is usually ads.
Yes.
And they're getting started on ads late.
Right.
And they have all this pressure because their business is very expensive. And they have a lot of competition coming from companies like Google who are like, we don't care. We can lose all the money we want in the world. Oh, and by the way, we have a massive ads business already that helps us monetize this, but we could treat AI as a loss leader. And so they're just like in this weird, tricky spot where like they maybe can't, it seems like they can't take advantage of their leadership position in consumer because they haven't like figured out how to monetize it properly and their runway just doesn't exist, right? And so I don't know. It's just it's tricky. It seems like it's very tricky. Like they're like they don't have a runway. They don't have a runway. Anyways, let's go to Tameka. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think it's not going to get easier when they IPO, right? Because shareholders don't love don't love speculation. So I mean, it's an interesting thing. Melissa, you brought up a really interesting point in that the one of my closest friends' name is Melissa, and so I call her Mel. But
But
um,
people call me Mel. It's fine.
about the them being a consumer, them being kind of the consumer companion and walking away from that, and the value of that, I think is really interesting. I also think that that speaks more to the uh, I don't know if their CMO is doing their job, right? There's a thing of, of understanding the power of your brand as opposed to the power of your kind of lead generation revenue driving side, right? And so that's always a challenge. I thought of a couple of things, and I don't know if either of you know Alan Wolk, but he's an interesting industry analyst and a CTV guy, and I read his newsletter this morning, and he said something that made sense to me, and it's like there's a difference between a social network and a video tool for content creation, and Sora was trying to be both of those.
Mhm.
And Alan's perspective was, look, if you think about social media and social networks, 1% of the population creates the content that everybody else watches. And so Sora was going to kind of fail as a social media platform because everybody wants to create a little bit of content, but creating content on a day-to-day continuous basis becomes a grind. And Melissa, I'm sure you know, I mean, even sort of on a brand end, even us, Shiv, like the amount of video content we have to create as you have digital even, right? It's not sustainable for an everyday person. So I think that was one thing. Like, what was Sora trying to be? And I think it was trying to be too many things at once. So trying to be a social network was hard. And I don't think that it doesn't surprise me that they cut that piece off. The video tool for content creation piece is an interesting area because I think that could be enterprise facing, that could be valuable from that side of the business, but it's also expensive. And there's probably other tools that are video centric and better. And so, I think that they were trying to do a little bit too much. But I think that the Disney piece, I think that Disney thought, hey, we need to be able to control how people are using our IP. And we know people are going to use our IP. And so we wanted to partner with someone to do that. And so I think Disney pulling back from that, it's interesting. I think we might see them partner with another video platform. Like, I think a partnership like that will come to fruition later because people do want to remix stuff. And even if they're not trying to do it on a giant creator level, they want to send it and share it with their friends, and kind of brands want to be part of that conversation. So I think a partnership like that will happen in the future.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And then, to that point, I like, I saw a bunch of these headlines on social media after this news came out. Like, I'm looking at one right now. Disney's Sora disaster shows AI will not revolutionize Hollywood. And I saw another one where somebody was just like, this just goes to show that, AI video creation will never be a thing. And, I saw this in one of the stories was like Project Hail Mary, which is the Ryan Gosling movie. I'm excited. I'm going to go see it with my wife this weekend. Project Hail Mary used no special effects and audiences loved it. And so AI is dead. Like, I think that stuff's ridiculous. And it's like, we're 3.5 years into this AI thing. And for people to start dancing on the grave of like AI video production or AI this or AI that, it's just super short-sighted and naive in my opinion. But I am influencing your opinion. Like, Melissa, I would love your take on like, what is the brand perspective on using, a Sora or a VO3, right? That's Google's video creation tool for video content production.
It's a really interesting debate that's happening right now. Look, there's I think to say that AI video production or not using AI, I think your word naive is spot on. Um, how and where it's being used, and are you using human likenesses, are you creating human beings, the voiceover versus translation, how are you paying royalties to people, because you are, even if it's it's made up of a sum of different parts or in likeness of, those are the conversations that I think are really important right now. And eh, you know i'm a I'm a big fan of using AI to help efficiency, to help on people's workload. If you can do something with AI pretty momentarily that would have taken a person 3 hours, and now that person can think up bigger ideas or do better things. I think that's really great. And I think it is very naive and extremely short-sighted to think that AI is not going to completely revolutionize the way that we're doing things.
Yep. Agreed.
Melissa, can I ask you a question on that vein? Like,
Yeah.
you brought up the sort of in the video workflow, and also the you didn't say deep fakes, but deep fakes and body doubles and all of that stuff. As a brand, you previously worked on things like Cadillac. I know you're working in a new company now, but like, are brand managers, are you thinking about, are modern CMOs now thinking about, okay, we're going to shoot a commercial. Do I spend do I spend $100,000 to get this actor in the commercial, or do I spend $50,000 to get this AI influencer virtual person in a commercial? Is that an actual decision that's being made now?
Those conversations are definitely happening, and I think from less so from a person perspective. There's a lot of conversation around like the AI music artists that
Mm.
was one of the most streamed, and um, things like that. I think it's it's a really interesting conversation, and there are it's what might seem simple. There are, I think, moral issues you have to talk about um, for artists and for people who we partner with, and for what that means for the world. I think there's a difference if you're doing something sort of like ambient background music versus a song that um, you end up not having to pay royalties to. And I think that at a higher level, at like an industry level, and this goes across marketing and film and any of these that are, where you're dealing with artists, they're going to have to really think about what is the model, how will royalties work? Because at a certain point, you talked earlier about shareholders and making sure that shareholders are happy. If you're paying royalties in perpetuity for using something that you could have created with AI, it is going to put brands in an uncomfortable position. And so I think at a higher level, there need to be conversations around how does this work now moving forward? What does this look like so that we don't lose some of the humanness and the human creativity. I love when AI helps us enhance things, and I hate when AI replaces things. I was listening to Pivot earlier this morning, and Scott said, as soon as they're using AI to show like babies' first steps or something, I'm out. And I was like, it's true, right? Like with animals, you want to see if it's fake, it doesn't mean the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I just think that we're at a point now where the technical capability is going to move really quickly, and we as humans are going to have to decide what's our role in that, and how are things going to work in 6 months and 6 years.
It's
Shiv, you knew
almost
we were going to get deep. You knew we were
yeah.
going to get deep on
I
this
knew it.
today.
I knew it. I knew we were going to spend a lot of time on this one. Now I have to rework all the rest of the news that we want to talk about. No, this is great. This is great. What I'm hearing, Melissa, I can think like a couple takeaways I just got from that is just like, the technology is not the limiting factor. It's not like how good will the AI look. Like clearly we know we're already so far ahead. It's going to look pretty much 100% natural pretty soon, right? It's about the humans kind of creating the right guardrails and being discerning, and us as humans figuring out what we're okay with and what we're not okay with from an AI perspective. And then the second part of that, like especially from a brand and an advertiser perspective, is um it seems like it's more about the business implications than it is about the actual creative at this point, right? Like, what are the business differences between going down this AI path versus this let's shoot it using actors path? And it's not as clear cut as people might think it is, right? Of just like, oh, obviously we're going to do AI, right? So, okay, let's move to the next story. So, story broke that Apple is planning to open Siri up to pretty much any and every AI model out there. So, quick details on this story. Apple had an exclusive deal with OpenAI to have basically like OpenAI's models power Siri. That exclusivity is ending. And now, basically, as an iPhone or an Apple user, you're going to be able to download any AI app, whether that's Claude, whether that's ChatGPT, Gemini, and you're going to be able to say, hey, Siri, use this model, use Gemini, use Claude, and you're gonna just be able to decide. Also, I want to note that there was an announcement like a month ago that Apple has a deal with Google to work specifically with Gemini's models and use those Gemini models for certain products. That work is going to continue. So that is not mutually exclusive or anything with this particular announcement. Um, There's a lot of interesting angles here, right? This is a very interesting strategic move by Apple. I wonder if Steve Jobs is rolling over in his grave. Before I say anything, Tameka, let's start with you.
Yeah.
Any initial reactions to this news from Apple?
So uh, I think two things come to mind immediately. One is maybe Apple doesn't want to get in this burn race to the bottom. Like I know that one of the things on our podcast is it's earners versus burners, right? Like who's
Yeah.
burning money in AI? Maybe Apple's like, look, listen, we're a software company. We have a relationship with people. We talk about privacy. We do all that. Let's just stay in our lane. We don't need to be playing in this burn it all down, in the quest of the best models race. So that was one thing for me. I also think, and again, I don't know, but like it gets bigger than just the individual consumer behavior. I think, maybe some of the stuff with privacy and potential privacy implications of OpenAI and how its data can be used and what it should be used for may be something that Apple is thinking about in the longer term, and so to me, it seems like they're doubling down on we are a consumer technology company. We are not an enterprise technology company. We're not doing all of this. Let us focus on what we do. And everybody else, if our consumers want to use other people's models within reason, like we'll maybe check and make sure that like they're not stealing their data, then let them.
Hmm.
That's kind of my gut on this.
Okay. Melissa, what do you think?
Yeah, I really love everything that you just said. I'm really curious about it. Um, is this going to be, as a consumer, I choose one and then that becomes my interface? So I say, it's always going to be chat or it's always going to be Claude. Or is it something where I can ask Claude 1 second and then go and see what Gemini has to say, which is how I on my computer am using things. Hey, check this, make sure there's no hallucinations. What's happening here? I'm really curious what the user interface and the experience of that is going to be. Those are my biggest questions on it. I do think um I do wonder what's happening in the background at Apple. I think to make it everything that you said, it's so what are the conversations that are happening? And it does feel so non-Apple. And it makes me wonder what will be the future at Apple and will they open up the ecosystem in other ways, or is this going to be and you almost are inherently by opening that doorway opening the ecosystem, right? And what will it mean for others? Will there be will a lot of other things also become more, not to wrongly use the word open source, but a little bit, share source, I guess you would call it. So I'm really curious on this one. I probably have more questions than opinions right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those are all great points. I mean, it's interesting, right? Like AI models, frontier models, feel like they're becoming increasingly a commodity. I don't know if you guys disagree, but it's like, I'd say like 6 months ago or a year ago, I would have stronger opinions about what to use Claude for versus ChatGPT versus Gemini. And it's all kind of converging. Like they're all becoming pretty good at most things. Sure, there's nuances. Yes, there's still nuances. But I just feel like there is convergence there. And so is Apple just kind of sitting there looking at this and saying, hey, we could start building frontier models and wall this all up. But to Tameka's point, then we're just burning a ton of cash. Like these other companies, like look at their capex, right? Meta's capex, Google's capex. It's crazy astronomical. Amazon's capex, and it's all being spent on data centers, AI infrastructure, frontier model development. And Apple's like, we don't have that kind of capex. Do we need to have that kind of capex? These companies are all spending the money. And the cool thing is like Apple has always owned the rails, right? Apple's always been the rails, right? They're the app store. They're the app store. They are the spigot of consumer access. And so they're like, why spend all that money on the infra when we can just charge? I mean, think about it, right? Uh, if you're downloading Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini on your phone, you may subscribe to their pros thing. You may buy tokens. You may spend money in the app. Guess who gets 30%? of all of that spend? Apple. So Apple's making money from the apps
Yeah.
without spending any money on the infrastructure, right? So
Well,
I
it's
think that's
it-
yeah,
part of what, and like I haven't had enough time to push through this in my brain, but it's is it possible that by how much will they track what's happening within whichever AI model you're using?
hmm,
And will they be able to monetize on that? And if they do, then is that against some of the privacy and protection that they
yep,
talk about? If I'm going into chat to talk about my quest results or like something healthcare, and then it becomes a portal into that, um is Apple reading through that to see where they need to monetize? Are they like it's an interesting um it's interesting as you think about in 2 years from now what it means versus as it launches.
I
totally.
think that the thing I would add to that, though, is right to bring it back to marketers. And I don't know if you were going to do that, Shiv, right? But marketers have to, you have to focus on what your company does best, right? Like, and not be distracted by 15,000 things. So OpenAI shut down Sora. Because maybe they're like, we don't have time to do video stuff. Apple's like, you know what? We don't have time to build frontier models. Let's continue to let's build MacBooks and like, let's build MacBooks and make Apple TV work well. And so sometimes it's like, don't be distracted by all the shiny new stuff. Connect with the shiny new stuff, integrate the shiny new stuff, but focus on what surprises and delights your customers. And nobody was surprised. All the other thing I will say is nobody was surprised and delighted by Apple Intelligence. I think that was also part of the issue as well. I think that's also
That's a
part of
good
it.
Yes.
point. That's a
But
good point.
again, like congrats to Apple for realizing that and
Yeah,
doing something about it. I think
yeah.
something you touched on, and we'll probably get into it more later, but one of the things that I think is really interesting right now is how marketers need to think about their brand and marketing now, because more and more of the conversations we talked a little bit about it with the chat gpt news, and chat being your like companion on a lot of things. More and more of people's shopping and getting opinions on things is going to happen through agents. And as that happens, as brands, and right now everyone thinks that by going in and managing Reddit that they're doing this, and it's just not what it's not how it's going to work at all. Um, you need to figure out how you get the agent to get you in the conversation now. That
Hmm.
is going to be a key thing that I don't think that marketers are thinking about it deeply enough right now. The other thing is that how, you talk a lot about brand and performance. And if you think about the way a lot of performance marketing works now, um, that I'm not going to say that performance marketing is dead, although it's like, it's an interesting thing to think about. The way that performance marketing works is in the moment you're putting something in front of people. If the agent is deciding what goes in front of people, you have to have your brand in front of them before the agent brings it up, because the agent
Hmm.
isn't doing it the way that you want. Now, how will that change as chat and, as OpenAI or Anthropic or anyone figures out how to monetize all of this? That conversation to me is also so interesting, because they're going to have to monetize it in a way that stays true to the consumer experience. Otherwise, you're just going to jump over to another platform. However, there's a huge opportunity there. I think about, and I was having this conversation yesterday. I'm so tired of every time I try to shop for something, like I want a new mattress. Well, everyone's like hacked up all the top 10 lists, and you never really get a true review on anything. And so as some AI can give me the true story, like, and that's why
Yeah.
Reddit like is such a good source, but that's not going to be the end all be all. As it can really start to give those recommendations, how have you as a brand positioned yourself to be known, and for me to say, oh yes, I've heard that, whatever the thing is that I'm talking to this about, oh, I love that brand. I love this. I love that. And so I think, and, we've already seen a lot more of experiential really coming back and in person and human. The brand building is going to happen outside of what has been performance as more and more moves into a chat interface. And so it's something that is a big thing that I think a lot of people um, aren't really ready for and really need to be thinking about differently.
Love that. I love it. Okay, let's keep moving. So now we're gonna do just quick hits of the week. So a few stories to just highlight, and you guys feel free to jump in, interrupt me, and be like, I have something to say about that. If you don't, I'm going to keep moving. So first of all, NewFronts were this week, the IAB NewFronts in New York, or this past week, and there were a lot of announcements, a lot of AI announcements, as you can imagine. Google and Meta announced a bunch of new tools for their respective ad platforms. And they're all kind of the same ideas, right? Here's an AI tool to make optimization better. Here's an AI tool for better audience discovery. Google announced a new tool that does a better job with AI matchmaking creators to advertisers for YouTube specifically. On and on and on, right? And I think like the big story there is these companies, the big ones in particular, are aggressively moving towards AI self-service capabilities in their platforms. And I think, it's hard for those companies to grow because they're already so big. So how do they find growth? They start eating into the share of agencies, right? And other companies that kind of double down on customer service or UIs or human capabilities. And that's why Zuckerberg said last year he wants to automate 100% of the entire
Yeah.
campaign process. So
I am going to jump in on this one, and it's a big warning I have to marketers. I think do not completely outsource your marketing to a partner who is optimizing, even if and someone said, well, if you're getting if I gave you $1 and I said I'd give you back 200, why wouldn't you do it? One thing that we know is that hate and contradiction spurs response. And what you don't want is for your brand to end up in something that, yes, you're getting huge response and it's completely outside of where your brand should be. And so you've always got to make sure that there are humans looking at what is working as closely as what isn't working. And so it's I think a warning to marketers to make sure that you're not just looking at the final results, but really understanding what's happening in the process with your brand.
That's
yep.
so interesting, Melissa. I feel like we've talked about this a couple of times on the episode on the pod, Shiv, and it's a thread that happens at conferences, like how much do you automate versus not. I never thought about kind of the automation from a brand safety implication. That's super interesting, as I wasn't even going to go there. I was going to go to you put in $1 and you got 200. Cool. If I have no idea how I got that 200, then my team is also not stupid in the process, but then like I can't ever replicate it. We can't pull out any of these insights. We can't figure out which lever moved this needle to help me understand back to my customer. And so I'm like, oh my God, brand safety. Plus we can't get any actual insights to know what happened. Like it's a recipe for transparency issues.
Yeah,
Well, it's a recipe for being beholden to these companies, right?
exactly.
That's what they want. They don't want you to know why it works. They want you to keep putting money into their machine, right? So,
Yep.
okay, let's go to the next story. Back to OpenAI, announced that they're extending their ChatGPT ads pilot. So it was a pilot. It was supposed to run through the end of March. They're like, hey, we're extending it. No surprise to anybody. Apparently, they are now on an annualized run rate of $100 million of ad revenue, which sounds like a lot, but if you actually do the math, like it's actually not that much. They had 30 some advertisers spending $200,000, and they're now extending that. They're asking for longer and bigger commitments now on an IO basis, and all of that is fine and dandy. But as we talked about earlier, it's interesting because they're kind of doing this soft pivot to enterprise. But if they're doing a pivot to enterprise, what's the plan with ads? Because ads is going to rely 100% on consumer growth and
Yep.
people using it for free. And so I think it's a little talking out of both sides of their mouth. It's a little concerning if you're a shareholder, like what's the strategy? Is it enterprise? Is it consumer? What is it? But you know,
Absolutely.
we're onward ho with ads, basically.
Yes.
Um, okay, I'm gonna keep moving
Yes.
unless you guys have something to say. Okay.
No surprise.
La-
With you.
no surprise. Okay, last story, and then we want to talk about you, Melissa. So last story was the Gap enabled native checkout in Gemini. And listen, in a vacuum, not that interesting. A lot of merchants are, you know, announcing things like this, and we've seen a lot of agentic commerce news in the last, you know, 6 months. I think what's interesting about this is just like the Sora thing. I think a lot of people have been dancing on the grave of agentic commerce because ChatGPT announced that they're killing native checkout in ChatGPT, and they're actually requiring merchants to have like their own app in ChatGPT to enable checkout. And so people are like, "Oh, agentic commerce is dead. It's never going to happen." And meanwhile, Gap is moving forward with Gemini, right? Not ChatGPT, but with Gemini. And we know Google has aggressively tried to push agentic commerce, which I think makes a lot of sense, right? They are not Amazon. They don't have transaction data, but maybe AI could be the way they get there. And so they're pushing hard into agentic commerce, and they're Google. So they don't have to focus as much as ChatGPT. They can make a lot of different bets in different areas. So I don't know if you guys have anything to add there. But if not, let's talk about you, Melissa.
I mean, I think agentic commerce will be a thing. Let's just let's be
Thank you.
clear. There should be no debate.
Thank you.
Um,
There's a lot of debate, Melissa.
yeah,
People are like, agentic commerce is never going to be real. It's a mirage.
I
And I don't understand it. Miles doesn't understand it.
I feel like, though, here's the thing, Shiv. I think the challenge, the gift and the curse of our wonderful industry is everybody wants to do breathless headlines.
Yeah.
Agentic commerce is dead. Agentic commerce is going to eat the world. Retailers are going to die. And
Yeah.
like it's there's no in the middle. I think the thing is, it takes time for consumers to change their behavior. Now, consumer the most dramatic rapid shift in consumer behavior we have witnessed, right, is the adoption of AI tools. Yes, that has happened. But how that shakes out in all the other industries that it touches still has time to unfold. People are using LLMs now. Yes, we accept that, which that cat is never going back in the bag. It's happening. It's going to dramatically impact lots of industries. We are watching how it starts to impact commerce. We have to build the pipes first so that the money can flow. And that's all. And OpenAI was like, you know what? We can't build these pipes. We thought we could. We thought because everybody's using us. It's great. No, I come back to something I said on an episode before. It's hard to build good ad tech. It's hard to build good MarTech. It's hard to build. And with financials, you got to do like, what is it, like SOX compliance and all of that stuff. I feel like OpenAI was like, no, you know what, homie, this is not our lane. We're not doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Okay. This is great. Thank you guys for helping me cover the news. Melissa, we want to hear about you. So let's kick it off. We want to hear about like your experience from the big brand perspective first. So like you were at Cadillac, you were the CMO. What was that experience like as AI came along and became a big thing? Like, how did that impact the organization from your lens, in a good way, in a bad way, in a confusing way? Like, we want to hear about that experience, and then we want to transition to what you're doing now.
yeah. So, I'm someone who like if there's an alpha or a beta or any kind of new thing, I want to be right in the middle of it. It's just I love being at the forefront of things, which means a lot of times it's not going to work, it's going to fail. It's I'm a try, and then if it doesn't, like, pull back. So I from the Sora perspective of that, I love what OpenAI did. So being a marketer, I think just for any marketer at this point right now is just a fun, fascinating time. Take a class, learn from other people, see how you can use it. Think about the things that you or your team is doing every day that is making them pull their hair out, and automate it. Because for the first time, that automation can be more human like on some of these repeatable tasks. So I think being at Cadillac and starting to experiment with some of the stuff, I was definitely jumping right into it. Um, there are a lot of big questions, when, and we had decided not to replace humans I don't know what the future will hold for us as an industry, but where we were, we're like, we'll change backgrounds. Now we're in a city, now we're in another city. And like for something like that, I think, when we were thinking about like dealer marketing, to be able to take a base asset of a car driving and swap out geographically where they were to make that relevant for each dealer, like that is game changer. And so things like that, I think it's just like such an unlock, and I have a lot of fun in that uncomfortable space. So I loved it, and I think that there's so much potential for the things that drive your teams nuts to become automated and have them almost supervise their own role and then do the things that, they're staying late for, or, putting to the weekend, or just not having time for. Like those things
Mhm.
can become the core job. And so just watching that change within my department and that change within the industry is really exciting.
So, can I ask a question about that? So, like, as a marketing leader in this moment, and I know it probably will change over time, but like in this moment, are you more in favor of like incremental change, or are you more in favor of like sweeping change, or is it like do you have to parallel path those things?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Yeah, parallel path. I think what you need to do, and the mistake, and I think that, I hate the stat, 95% of all AI pilots fail. Well, you didn't do it right. Like it's not how AI works. You've got to keep going. That's a human error, not an AI error. But what you need to do is you talk about blank slate, and how many times have you seen a project greenfield, a project blank slate, a project whatever it is? For one of the first times ever, you really do need to wipe it clean and say, if I were building this today, how would I do it? And you're going to do it wrong if you just do it incrementally, because you're going to
Okay,
change parts of a process that shouldn't even exist. And
got
so
it.
I think that that's a really important thing. That's a toolkit that marketers need, is how do I look at what is the art of possible? What could this be? How should this run? And then what do I do in small pieces? And what do I just start building from scratch? And how do I maybe start editing and playing with creative where I'm changing cities in the background while I'm building all new pipes to be able
Got it.
to do something completely differently from a workflow perspective or something. So, I it's definitely a yes and both answer.
Got it. That's really
Shiv,
helpful.
did you hear that? We have to rip it all up and start from scratch. Just do you
Tami
know what I'm
Tamika's
talking
giving
about
me
here too?
Tamika's giving me business feedback on the
And that's
podcast.
just we got
Okay. Melissa, tell us a little bit about what you're doing now.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And anyone who's been close to me over really my lifetime knows how passionate I am about health and wellness. And I'm working for a company now it's really two companies that have been operating together, and we're working on separating them. One is a data tech AI platform. And what that platform does is it pulls in wearable data, whether that's your Aura Ring, your Apple Watch, your Whoop, like whatever it is, as well as any medical device, like your blood pressure cuff, a continuous glucose monitor, glucose readings, pulls it in with all of your lifestyle data. If And there is an app that goes with it. If you track what you're eating, you take pictures, you just type it in, etc. You put in your exercise. It also will tell you, and I'm going to get to the clinical part. This is where it gets really fascinating. It'll tell you things like if you if you're doing your breath work regularly, your HRV goes up by 30%. And it'll show you how healthy habits are really affecting your overall health. It can pull in blood work, etc. It's been built out with a doctor. So there is a doctor portal that goes along with this. So doctors who are using the system, and that's what we do at Measured Wellness, doctors who are using the system are able to enact what we call the continuous care experience. They basically, what normally happens, you go to the doctor says, you have an issue with your blood work, your A1C is high, you're getting hypertensive, whatever those things are. They send you home, you kind of do some stuff. You're going to go back to the doctor usually in 4 to 6 months, and honestly things haven't really changed because you brought
Hmm.
you home. And the doctor sees point A, point B. What we're enabling is continuous data partnered with AI. And this was all built with AI to understand what is creating differences on the scale, what is creating glucose spikes. And then at Measured Wellness, you work with a team of clinicians who you have a dietitian who's going to help you smooth out your glucose and who's going to help with here's how you eat to really lose weight. Um, you work with someone who can help with breath work. You work with someone who will help you with, whatever it is. If it's your blood pressure, here's what your exercise plan should be. You work with these people and if you think about behavior modification, true behavior modification, I think of things like AA or Weight Watchers, where you have this human interaction. We've built that into our care, and it's all run by a doctor. So that what we're seeing is much better outcomes for people. Um, Here's a fascinating one. I love this one that um, we work with Parkinson's patients. We have a whole segment for Parkinson's. And we were noticing that glucose spikes were correlated to tremors being worse. And so by talking to a dietitian, understanding what was driving those, and that was all, derived from AI correlations, et cetera, they're able to help people alleviate symptoms through diet. So um, as you can probably tell, it's a point of passion for me.
Wow.
And I'm here to help grow and scale the business. And I'm absolutely loving it. We've got a great team of incredible humans, and I'm ready to help people. Like
Yeah.
It's
it applies to
so
anything. Yeah.
so fascinating. Can I ask a question, Shiv, or
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
you
No,
have
go
one
ahead,
already? I mean,
please.
it's so fascinating, Melissa, on so many levels. It's like you're because I actually did want to ask you another question because you said you're decoupling, and what were you decoupling? But it's like you're at the perfect time of capitalizing on kind of one, I think, the biohacking sort of trend of people really wanting to manage their wellness and not just health, right? And manage all the pieces. I'll give you an example. So I go to an acupuncturist and I have a regular doctor. I use One Medical from Amazon. And I got some blood work done. My acupuncturist, she's an osteopath, she asked me for very specific tests. I went to One Medical to my doctor. She's like, well, why do you want this test? And why do you want that test? And she's just doing her doctor thing, right? And I was like, well,
Right.
my acupuncturist wants this. Long story short, I get the tests. Some of the levels are high, A1C, among other things. And my doctor's like, well, that's kind of high, but everybody else is, and da da da. And I go to my acupuncturist, and she's like, nope, we need to fix this and this and this and this and
Yeah.
this and this. And I worked on some of that, and I was like, but so this is the missing piece though. I'm like, so I got to get my blood work done in 6 months again. But like, how do I know which of the things that we just fixed, or which of the things that you recommended that I do, take these drops, do this breath work, do this acupuncture? How do I know which of these things
Yeah.
actually move the needle, so to speak? And I'm like trying to piece that together myself. And my acupuncturist is great. My doctor is great, but they don't have anything that kind of connects those dots. So I'm like, can I get in the beta? But one of the questions I have is from the AI piece and the health and the consumer brand piece. This is so intimate, and this is so close to the vest. How do you ensure that you keep the data safe? And how do you also ensure that you communicate with your consumers that the AI is working for them and not like extracting anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's obviously at the core of everything. So, especially, in medical, you're working with HIPAA compliance. So, there's very strict standards that make sure that the way that we're doing it is always in a privacy compliant way. Um, and people can opt in or out of using the devices, or um, how they're going to put their data in. And I think what we're seeing with most people is they just love the results. And And it is privacy compliant and safe. So there's little risk there.
That's
Yeah,
great.
no, and I wasn't saying there was risk, but it's more like from the marketing perspective, are you thinking about how you have to, do you feel like you have to communicate that to consumers in an AI space where people are more cognizant of privacy and data? Is that something that you have to communicate explicitly or not?
It's an interesting thing because we have, we have like the app that can go direct to consumer. And then the other part is managed through a doctor and a clinical team. And I think when you're interfacing with a doctor and a clinical team, I don't think that's the thing we'll need to address upfront. I think probably I don't think that'll ever be the first message for us anyway.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
more about being the CEO of your health and taking control.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's awesome to hear that you're doing that work. Like, health is such a big issue and such a big opportunity in our country. And I think like, AI for healthcare, we talk about AI for marketing all the time. And yeah, there's all these different use cases. AI for health, man, like that's incredible, right? Like if we use it properly, that's an incredible thing. The way you described it, Melissa, I'm like, wait, why isn't everybody doing this now? Like what? Let's all do that right now. Anyways, that's all the time we have for today. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us. You were awesome. Tameka, thanks for being my co-host this week. Thanks to the listeners for joining the AI Edge podcast. We'll see you again next week for another awesome episode.